All right, everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name is Jason Cassidy. I'm the CEO of Shinydocs Corporation, and today we're going to talk about unlocking the power of your OpenText content server using AI and some automation. A little bit about us. We are the OpenText 2016 and 2017 Global Technology Partner of the Year, and we earn that by having obviously a great relationship with OpenText. OpenText resells our product worldwide, and we have been the best-selling third-party technology worldwide for 2 years in a row. Very proud of that. And, of course, as our status as a OpenText proud Platinum Technology Partner. As organizations out there, it's really important to drive your business with your data. I think everybody would agree with that, is that if there's something worth keeping, then that has business value for your organization, and it should drive some future decision-making. It should drive some future protections for your organizations, and certainly it should be something that is valuable to your organization. But unfortunately, most of the decision-making and that value that's driving business is really in the structured data, stuff that's in maybe your ERP systems and databases. And to date, all the rest of the data that's out there is largely untapped. It's sitting in file shares, it's sitting on people's desktops. A lot of it is in your email and as attachments and even the email content itself. So when you compare what is big data, a couple of terabytes of information that's driving your decision making, versus the hundreds of terabytes or perhaps petabytes of data out there that your organization actually generates, you'll notice that big data isn't really that big yet. And the promise of enterprise content management and the value of OpenText Content Server, in my opinion, really applies across all of this unstructured data. You really want audit histories for everything. You really want searchability for everything. You want classification for everything. You want defensible disposition. You want categories and attributes. You want all of that value. But to get everything under control has proven to be a little bit difficult. If we look at a typical CIO landscape, this might be prior to deployment, or it might be after deployment. We find that the important records, of course, find their way into OpenText Content Server. That's our band of enterprise content management there. But a lot of data sits outside of it. And a lot of that stuff that's in your shared drive XYZ really deserves the management that comes along with OpenText Content Server. And certainly the information that's on user desktops as well. How many important contracts or that type of information might just get lost or saved in somebody's My Documents folder and not available to drive future business. And then, of course, email as well. There's a lot of attachments and value that gets generated there, and that information deserves to be classified and being used to power your business as well. So most organizations look a little bit more like on the left than on the right, but I think we all agree we bring in enterprise content management to get more like what we see on the right. And that is where all of the data that you want managed is managed and classified. But how do you get there? First step, and this is one of the reasons why we are the best-selling technology for OpenText worldwide, and that is the fact that you have to simplify what you expect from your end users. So this is the Shinydrive interface, and if you're not using it yet, you really should be. We've had 3 years now to perfect it and make it really work well within the Windows and Mac operating systems. Your end users don't really know or care that they're using an enterprise content management system, and it works with their desktop applications the way you would expect it to work. Of course, we introduce lots of additional functionality on top of that, but the base thing that your end users really have to know is really limited to just, can they double-click on a document, make their change, and click Save? So it's quite a powerful way of driving end-user adoption of the system. And of course, we like to show some graphs that demonstrate the success associated with that. This is a customer that deployed with us pretty early. They bought into the idea of content management and using Content Server with Enterprise Connect. Well, we deployed Shinydrive in June of 2015. You see what happened. 600% increase in utilization. And oh, by the way, they canceled all of their training programs around using enterprise content management. That's what happens when you make it easier for end users. But that doesn't necessarily get all that other information that's sitting out there. Remember that big arena that we showed of what should be big data? Well, how do you get that in the Content Server, and how do you get 100% management? And that's some of the things we want to address. Step one is understand where your data is. That before it gets in the Content Server, we want to know where all your data is, what type of data it is. And I don't mean Word, PowerPoint, and Excel files. I mean, is it a contract? Is it a license agreement? Is it your claims form A, B, or C? Those types of things historically have been really difficult. You'd have to have a bunch of developers sit down and write regular expressions and do other things to figure out, well, is this type of document or is this that type of document? Well, with AI and what we're going to show you today, just by using OpenText Content Server, it actually trains up the system on what it means to be these types of documents. By using OpenText Content Server the way it's intended to be used, you are actually training up the system on what it means to be the document types so that people don't have to do that in the future, and you can use that to clean up your data. Historically, we'd always do things like we'd take a file from a file share and we'd put it in ECM. Great. So the value that you get is now I got an audit history and a version history, and I see that I did it. It was Jason that saved this file, and okay, good, and now it's managed and maybe it's searchable. But there's so much value that you need to apply to that data prior to ingestion into the ECM to really maximize what it means. The context associated with the data is really important. Have I seen this document before? What is the additional metadata associated with it? Can I classify it based upon other documents that I've seen before? Can I extract entities like people's names, PII, organization names, use that to drive workflow? How enriched is my index associated with it? Am I just using it to search for keywords? Or does the index itself know that this is this type of document and this type of data, and it relates to other documents as well? We've layered on all this value in between the traditional save or migration from a file share into ECM. It's not just a one-for-one, here's a document that goes into ECM now. Now it's enriched using the artificial intelligence, and what's really nice is the end user experience doesn't really have to change. So let's get out a PowerPoint and get right into what this means. So first, I'm going to use Shinydrive and Content Server interchangeably. So here's my OpenText Content Server. Here's some content in here. It's got some documents that have already been classified, and here it is in Shinydrive. So here's some documents in Content Server using categories and attributes to identify what type of document it is. This happens to be an ECC guide from a Canadian open government data source that we have. We have media presentations, projects, these types of things. The first thing that we do with this is, as you put in some information and documents into Content Server, obviously when you drag and drop, you can put categories and attributes on something, or you can classify it, and good, now it's in Content Server. But we use that as a training event to train up our document classifier. Part of our Shinydrive version 2 platform, it actually has the document classification tools built right into it. So in this case, we've crawled Content Server and we've built up this open government content classifier based upon the data that was in Content Server. Now, to sit down in front of a traditional classification tool, you might have to sit there and give it, here's one document, here's the next document, here's the next document, and then test it. The way we do it, we use your existing Content Server. So to actually train up this classifier, in this case, it's a couple hundred documents, it took it about 8 seconds, which is pretty amazing when you consider that historically how hard it is to go out and create document classifiers using regular expressions or exemplary documents. In this case, it's just Content Server that does it. So based upon this, we can do some interesting things. So the first interesting thing that we do with this information is we go out and crawl data sources and say, how many of each of these documents, based upon the examples of Content Server, can we find either on file shares or within Content Server itself and other locations? And we build up visualizations associated with this. How many of each of these document types by storage and by count, and then we can report back on all sorts of interesting things about this data. You can also go to any document anywhere and ask it some questions and say, tell me what type of document you are. And the system uses that classifier that I showed you to compare it to all the different examples that we have in Content Server, and it did it in milliseconds. It comes back and says that's an ECC report. And it works obviously even with complex documents. Here's a presentation. In this case, the document itself is being OCR'd and text extracted and then compared against all the other documents in that classifier. And it'll come back, and based upon everything it's seen before, it knows that that's a presentation. So that's really powerful now that you can go to any document anywhere and ask it, hey, based upon what I've seen in Content Server before, what kind of document are you? If you only have 1% of your documents or 0.5% of your documents in Content Server and they're classified okay, that is enough to go out and train a classifier on what it means to be those types of documents, and then go and crawl all the rest of your file shares and then classify the data and perhaps even ingest them into OpenText Content Server. Let's get into the ingestion use case. First, I'm going to show you kind of a traditional ingestion use case, and then we'll extend it to talk about what it is from an AI and classification standpoint. I've got a spot here that I've set up, and I'd like to bring some documents into that migration folder. I want to pay attention to a couple of things like the original create dates, modified dates, and even permissions on the document. Let's note Jason Cassidy here has read-only permissions to this document. When I bring this stuff into Content Server, the last thing I want to do is lose any of the fidelity of the document. So I want to keep all of that information, create dates, modified dates, and even right down to the permissions of the document. The first thing I'll show you here is what I call full fidelity migration. I'm moving it into the folder with this ID. That's the content that I was showing you there. And hey, let's run this. So this thing is doing some pretty powerful stuff at a very fast speed. It is deduping the data, meaning anything that it comes across that is a duplicate, it is actually creating a shortcut to the first one that it finds. So right away, you clean up 30% of your data just through deduplication. And not only does it do that, it brings it into Content Suite, full fidelity. And what I mean by full fidelity is, look at that, the original create dates and modified dates are intact. The documents, of course, each have a version, that is the version that was on that shared drive. And when I even go into the permissions, remember that JCast user that had read-only access? Well, now JCast has CNC contents access within Content Server. And when you have the Shinydrive in front of it, this is what it looked like before to your users. And this is what it looks like now after to your users. And I hope you agree it looks like the same thing because it is the same thing. It's the same content, and as far as your end users are concerned, nothing has changed. But for you, you get all the value of Content Server. That means the records management, the version history, attribution, categories and attributes, everything associated with Content Suite is still in play in real time, and this is 100% of your enterprise data set available to you. So let's take it to the next level with some artificial intelligence. And we're going to use the same thing that we did with the open government data set previously to show you how the AI can make this process even more powerful. In this same system here, I got a Shinydocs folder and what I'm going to call RM record series classifications that are important to us. Previously, you saw the open government classifications. These ones here, this is some Shinydocs data. So Shinydocs Finance for purchase invoices, we got legal documents, NDAs, maintenance agreements, license agreements. It would be a lot to ask our users to make sure that they apply the correct record series to every document. So what we do is we give it some example documents just by adding them to Content Server. So we added some real customer information into the system here. So here's a sample NDA, and it's flagged as an NDA. And here's a license agreement that, of course, is flagged as a license agreement within Content Server. This is just our Shinydrive veneer interface on top of Content Server. In case you're wondering why it's slightly different, that's just, we try to simplify it a little bit for end users. So now that it's in Content Server, I can go to any location, anywhere, and ask, hey, what kind of document are you? Just the same as we did before. And it comes back and it says, hey, I know that's a license agreement. Well, that one said license right in the name, so that's a good indication. Well, let's go to unknown.docx and do a classification. And it comes back and says that's a non-disclosure agreement. Well, let's have a look at unknown.docx. Yeah, of course it's a non-disclosure agreement. The AI knows that. So let's use that power and that knowledge now to do a migration that's even better than that full fidelity migration that we did before. Here's some sample data. I've got some license agreements in here, got an invoice and some order information. So let's move all this information into OpenText Content Suite. But even better, we're going to classify it as it comes in using the artificial intelligence, picking up on what people have already done historically. I'm running a classification script. as a background, everything that we do as far as the migration capability is all scriptable, and that allows people to run the scripts overnight and these types of things as scheduled tasks, and we ingest information pretty quickly. How long would it take to have somebody go into your data, double-click on each document, drag and drop it into Content Server, and then classify it? Somebody who's really fast might be able to do it, a document every 2 or 3 minutes, and that'd be pretty good. We just did a dozen documents in about maybe a second, and it's gone into Content Suites, but now we have all the value of Content Server associated with this. You got your Content Suite permissions, your cuts and nats, and let's have a look, and it's already flagged appropriately as a non-disclosure agreement. And of course, every other document that's in there is flagged appropriately as well. What you can do now is go out and have a look at your file share data and understand exactly what is out there, make some interesting and really powerful decisions about what you would like to move into the Content Suite, and ask your file shares and your other systems, what kind of documents are you really? It's not good enough just to say, I want to move all the PDFs in. How about if we have a look at all the PDFs and just say, I only want to move in all of this type of document or that type of document? It's much more powerful than just saying, well, let's get rid of all this kind of file and keep all this kind of file. And we can do that using the AI at machine speed, using exactly the tools that I just shown you there. One of the massive benefits of going through and classifying and understanding your data, either as part of your Content Server or pre-ingestion, is the ability to do some discovery associated with this data and start making some interesting decisions around it. Let's go back to that open government example, and there's the open government files. As we crawl and as we understand, we know everything about these documents. We know their classification, we know the text in them, we know the create dates, the modified date. We can extract entities, and I'll get into that in a moment. It's pretty powerful. One nice thing from a discovery standpoint is now all of a sudden you can do some interesting things. Like imagine that you have a GDPR request. Say Nathan Gillette wants to understand how you're using his data. And you can go and find, here's all the documents that are classified as a presentation that feature the name Nathan Gillette in it. Or let's just more generically find out, hey, where are we using the name Nathan Gillette across our entire data set? So think about this for a second. This is from your shared drive data and from your Content Server data. And you know what types of documents they are, you know where they are, how they're being used, and you can go off and figure out what PII is in there, right down to the people's names. So here it is. Here's the 2 documents that we're using that have Nathan Gillette's name in there. So that's pretty interesting certainly from a GDPR compliance, and every country is moving in that direction right now. I know that we've got like the Canadian Digital Privacy Act that's coming into force. So everybody's being held accountable now for what information that they're keeping from everybody. This is both a compliance tool and certainly a discovery tool, which is quite powerful. And the ability to visualize and understand how all this data fits together is really great. And it all stems from the fact that we know what type of documents there are, and we have a system now that people are willing to use for every save and save as, because it's so simple. The last thing I'm going to show is kind of a fun extension of the AI use case, and it comes into the idea of being able to understand what parts of documents there are. So if I have a look at our cognitive toolkit, I've got location extractors and organization extractors and people extractors. And what that means is not only can we figure out what types of documents there are, we can also figure out the information about the documents. Here's what I'm trying to achieve. I want to open up a document, and I want this document to get saved into the correct location within Content Suite without me having to do anything. I open up a document, make an edit to the document, so it's the non-disclosure agreement that we had to look at before, and it's between Amazing Corporation and Shinydocs. So of course we know it's an NDA. We use the same tool to show that it's an NDA, and then I can extract out the entities. So we use this entity extraction, that capability that's built into the platform, to identify that the 2 principals in this document are Shinydocs Corporation and Amazing Corporation. What's really cool about that entity extraction is it uses natural language to understand that it's an organization name rather than regular expressions and old ways of the programmers would try to figure out what this is. So what natural language does is it actually uses artificial intelligence to figure out that every time this phrase happens, there tends to be a corporation name or an organization name that comes after. And that's certainly different than just writing a bunch of rules just about this keyword triggers this being an organization. Now we know that this is Shinydocs Corporation. We know it's Amazing Corporation. And this is where it gets really interesting. I can click this Smart Save. And what Smart Save is doing is it's actually checking Content Server to check and see, is there an Amazing Corporation already in Content Server in my company's folder? If not, I'm going to create that folder. If there is, I'm going to save this document into that folder. So you can see it was previously, before clicking Save, it was named nda.docx. That was my template. But sliding back, you can see now it's actually called Amazing Corporation Shinydocs Legal NDA. Well, where did it get this information? It got this information from the classification of the document. It got this from the document contents using artificial intelligence and natural language understanding. And it just knows where Content Server is and what's going on in Content Server and just applied a pretty simple rule of saying, let's create that folder. We've gone from template to document now managed and reserved within Content Server just by clicking Save. And it was all the artificial intelligence that did that. Behind the scenes, you can see when you click refresh here, Amazing Corporation has just been created. There's the document that got saved, and it's saved within Content Suite. And it's already got the classification applied to it. In this case, we're using categories and attributes, but you see it's flagged as a legal non-disclosure agreement. So crazy powerful use case of an end user just double clicks on the document, starts making their change, and they click Save, and right away it is managed within Content Suite, and it is records managed, it has its version history, it has its audit history, it does everything, and it was as easy as clicking Save for the user. So that's where artificial intelligence is going. That is a cool manifestation that we have as part of our platform, and it's all powered by the entity extraction and classification engine. If I go back to the slideshow here, I hope you can see what it is that we're trying to achieve with this, and that is by adding and enriching all this value, all of a sudden now you can understand your data so much better. But what are we trying to do with customers? Well, we want to run proof of concepts with you. This, obviously, it's new technology, and we announced it back at the Enterprise World Show back in July, which was a great success for us. Since then, we have run successfully or are in the middle of 34 proof of concepts with customers as far as making document migrations cheaper, faster, and far more effective. And then obviously the artificial intelligence can make end users far more effective too, just based upon that information that's in OpenText Content Suite. So with that, I would definitely like to say thank you very much for joining. Again, if you have any other questions, just slip us an email. I'm Jason Cassidy. I'm jcasty@shinydocs.com. But certainly this is the right place to go, www.shinydocs.com/POC, because we want to run proof of concepts with you and demonstrate this value for certain with you. So thank you very much for your attendance today, and look forward to talking to you again soon.